Trump's desert diplomacy. Well, viewers, with fighter jets overhead and golden carpets rolled out, Donald Trump touched down in Riyadh to kick off a high-stakes four-day tour of the Middle East. First, it's going to be the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, followed by Qatar and the UAE. That will be on the agenda. Well, it's going to be all about deals. And he wants, in his words, big ones. Investment, weapons, and of course, influence. Elon Musk, Nvidia's leadership, and Trump's top aides have joined him for a lunch at the royal court as rumors swirl of a $100 billion arms package. But absent from all this trip and this grand presentation is Israel. And that silence, viewers, is loud. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu watches from the sidelines again as Trump bypasses Jerusalem and presses Gulf leaders on Gaza ceasefires, hostage deals, without Netanyahu. But that's not all. There is a lot more to it, and he calls this a new vision for the region. But critics call it a policy of surprises, one that may be reshaping alliances, with, of course, Netanyahu left in the cold, with diplomacy getting second and probably even a raw end of the deal, with economics and business really trumping everything else. And which is why the quick questions that we are asking, I'm going to put forth to our guests as well. First up, which business deals does Trump hope that he can actually ink in this entire trip? Remember, there are 3 countries and at least 20 deals on the table. Which are those that could actually be the ones that will see fruition? Next, is this trip really all about business with very little as far as diplomacy is concerned? Which is why the delegation also seems to be swinging completely towards the business side. Third, and most importantly, what message is Trump sending to American allies by choosing Saudi Arabia as the first country where he is visiting as a state, his first state visit in his second term? What is that message to the entire American ally ecosystem? And lastly, will Trump push for some sort of a Saudi-Israel deal? It may not be the Abraham Accord. What shape could that be? Is there any such deal that could be on the table? Joining me from Abu Dhabi is Dr. Asif Iqbal, who's the president of the Indian Economic Trade Organization. And there's also Daniel Silverberg, who's the director for Capstone, a global consultancy, and he's also at the CNAS. And in fact, Daniel, let me start with you on this. There's been a lot of expectations as far as President Trump's visit is concerned, but it seems all those expectations are primarily on the business side.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I actually would quibble with the distinction between business objectives and diplomacy objectives. What we see here, similar to the IMEC announcement by the Biden administration in September 2023, good business is good diplomacy. And in this instance, President Trump is aiming for the stars, particularly in the AI microprocessor chips context. Don't underestimate the significance of Trump very likely inking a deal with the Saudis and with the Emiratis for massive exports of NVIDIA and Microsoft technologies for G42 and data center construction. This is massive. This is something that elements of the Biden administration wanted to get done, and they couldn't in the capacity that they wanted because of internal fights. President Trump is going to get that done. It is great for American business. It is driven primarily by a desire to get China out of the region. That is an animating principle from the Biden administration, continuing through the Trump administration. That is going to be probably the most tangible gain from this trip.
Okay, so you think that this would allow America to gain a foothold in the region, and it would ensure that it is able to at least elbow out some of the space that China has right now. China is one of the largest trading partners of most of these countries, whether it's UAE, Saudi, and others, at a time when, of course, they continue to have defense bases of the U.S. And I think that's the whole tricky part of this relationship, isn't it? But Daniel, then let me also ask you this. What, according to you, could be the big wins that President Trump should be should be looking to get out of this? It could be across the board, but what, according to you, could be those big 3 wins that he would like when he goes back to his domestic audience?
Sure. First, let me be clear. Trump has already achieved a victory of sorts by going to Saudi and UAE and cementing this relationship. And in my view, he is very much building on initiatives from the Biden administration. The Biden team essentially hammered out a normalization deal between the Saudis and Israel, and they also, based on public reporting, pretty much nailed down the details of a U.S.-Saudi treaty. So Trump is really capitalizing on what the Biden team had started. But what victory here is going to look like is threefold. Number one, getting this CHIPS deal done. I'm confident it's going to be announced. And what that will do is tighten the connections in key technologies between the UAE and Saudi and the United States. They are going to be relying on U.S. companies to drive G42 and data centers rather than the Chinese. That's first. Second, I do expect a number of defense deals to be inked. What those actually produce, that always remains a question. There's always a lot of hype around these announcements. Let's see what actually gets produced. Third, and this is most relevant for India and for key businesses in India and infrastructure. The one thing that President Trump has continued from the Biden administration is a passion for global infrastructure development. This is called the PGI. This is IMEC from September 2023. Expect major infrastructure deals ranging from critical minerals to Saudi and UAE investment in global infrastructure to again strengthen the U.S. hand to combat Chinese economic influence in the region and around the world and further enhance partnerships with the United States. This is going to be IMEC, hopefully, on steroids.
Okay, that's a very optimistic, positive note in terms of how to evaluate this. Dr. Asif, you want to come in there in terms of what could be the big business outcomes of this?
Well, I believe that the outcome of this would be more of a personal, a business, family, a business intersect, which is in this Gulf tour for Trump. Considering the fact that he has left European countries, Canada, Mexico, but he's landing as an official for the first time in the Middle East, and the officials who are accompanying him and the delegation that is accompanying him consists of all the top industrialists and the top people who are into the economic diplomacy and who are playing a very important role. Like, for example, the BlackRock CEO is there, the White House, the crypto czar is there, the Northrop Grumman CEO is there, Lockheed Martin. They are there, and IBM is there. So we have all these people accompanying him, and we also have to see if Saudi Arabia is going to place an order for the F-35s or F-16. So that's something that is remaining. And also, it shouldn't look like, it's a one-sided outward investment by the Saudi Arabia. They are looking at themselves as one of the world's topmost center for, arbitration and of these kind of peaceful dialogues that they are doing. And their ceasefire efforts, in putting together. And also the fact that the Abraham Accords did not include Saudi Arabia. So hopefully that could be one of the, discussions that Trump might be having.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see as to which of those actually turn out. Of course, there is the diplomatic side of it, the geopolitical side of it, and the economic side to it. There are some talks that President Trump may, in fact, hop across and also go to Istanbul for the Russia-Ukraine peace talks, if at all they happen. But I want to come back, Stephen, and ask you, Daniel, ask you about after Saudi Arabia, he then, of course, goes to Qatar, where it will be very important from the Hamas-Gaza point of view, the ceasefire discussion point of view. But how important and significant is the fact that he's not having a stopover at Tel Aviv?
I frankly don't read that much into it. This trip is primarily Gulf focused. There's always a lot of noise put on potential tensions between the U.S. and Israel. I would not make that much of it. However, it does strike me as pretty clear that President Trump wants the Gaza war to be over. And this is where President Trump's interests and those of Prime Minister Netanyahu quite likely diverge. President Trump wants all of the hostages out. He wants a ceasefire reached. That might not be in Prime Minister Netanyahu's immediate interest. And bear in mind as well, overarching all of this is that there are potential we know there are Iran negotiations happening. There's a potential Iran deal in the offing. And that's something that also concerns Prime Minister Netanyahu and plays into the Israel-U.S. dynamic. So bottom line, don't read a lot into the fact that he's not going to Israel. However, no question President Trump wants to be supporting things like Saudi Vision 2030, involved in the economic vibrancy of the Middle East and partners like UAE and Saudi. He does not want the U.S. enmeshed in a Gaza war. He wants that over.
Indeed. Quick closing comments from you, Asif.
Yes, I believe that Qatar, which hosts the largest U.S. military base in the region with approximately 10,000 U.S. troops, will like to showcase itself, and especially after the 2022 World Cup, their economy has not been doing very well. And the good thing is, a good sign of it was the release of one of the American-Israeli hostage, Eden Alexander, just before Trump took off his flight to Middle East. So that was, initiated by Qatar, and I believe that Qatar is playing a very important role when it comes to, this particular aspect of, playing an important role in this region.
All right, let's leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to keep coming back to this story through the course of the week. Well, bottom line, viewers, as far as President Trump's visit is concerned, well, he does want some important wins, some key wins that he would be looking out for the entire region. First up, he would want Turkey to recognize the sovereignty of Syria, something that could really change the game. And also from a US-Russia point of view relationship, it will have an impact. Second, he would want a Saudi Arabia-Israel deal to happen, some sort of an arrangement, engagement that sort of ensures that the two sides recognize each other. And even if it's not the Abraham Accords, it's a starter, it's a move towards the front. Third, he would want big-ticket mega investments, whether it is in the field of aviation orders, whether it is in semiconductors, AI, defense orders. He would want bucket loads of this to take back to his domestic audience and say that, see, my plan of economic strategy is working, my big trade plan is working, and that gamble has paid off. It's important for President Trump and his constituency back home. And lastly, the one win that he would desperately like to see is to have some sort of a ceasefire arrangement between Israel and Hamas, because that would ensure that he's able to at least end one out of the two wars that he said that he would end in 24 hours.